I could be wrong, but of all the podcasts you listen to, I have a feeling that you will not hear this statement from anyone else but me. Welcome to Food for Thought as we enter the 18th year of this podcast. The podcast is in its 18th year. Welcome to Food for Thought. This podcast is all about exploring, celebrating, and manifesting a life motivated and defined by unconditional compassion and optimal wellness. It's pretty simple, but that's pretty broad. My intention is to inspire and empower and enable you to live as joyfully, healthfully, and deliciously as possible. And today's episode is going to deliver on that. Today's episode is You Are What You Focus On, 10 more ways to create a meaningful life as a practicing human. Hi, everyone. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at joyfulvegan.com. Remember, this podcast is listener supported. So if it's something you value and you'd like some perks and you'd like to be part of this incredible community, we've got over at patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can head there to become a supporter today at your chosen level. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support, for subscribing, for listening, and for leaving ratings and reviews. If you could just pause this podcast right now and go leave a rating and review over at Apple Podcasts, I would be so grateful. And you can find everything and more at joyfulvegan.com. Now, several years ago, I did a podcast episode called Everything I Know I've Learned from Living, 50 Ways to Create a Meaningful Life. Maybe a couple things are going to overlap in today's episode, but you're going to hear a lot of new things in today's episode. And I don't know about you, but I'm always interested in creating a meaningful life. And today I have 10 more ways to do so. I'm always inclined to say 10 ways or 50 ways I create a meaningful life, because I certainly don't have all the answers, and I'm not pretending that this is some formula that I have figured out that nobody else has. I am absolutely a student of life, and I am sharing with you what I implement, and I genuinely implement all of the things that I'm sharing with you. And I share this at the beginning of the year. I know this is not a favorite time of year for everyone. This is a favorite time of year for me. I know everyone is telling you to stop creating New Year's resolutions, and I understand why that is suggested, but I think this is a sacred time of year, this threshold that we cross from one year to the next. I love places of transition where we step out of one place and into another, one that is exciting and open and full of possibility. I find that sacred. I think it is just a really powerful, palpable time when I feel like we can feel that kind of transition. And it's natural to pause this time of year to reflect on the year that's passed, and to honor what I've learned, and to honor the challenges I have faced, and to examine the growth that I've experienced. I saw some neighbors. David and I were walking and coming back from a walk, and we saw some neighbors. This was just a couple days ago. And I said, "Hi, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year." It's a couple and their family. And they were very sweet. They're like, "Oh, yeah, Happy New Year. Fine, fine, fine." I just find it so anticlimactic. It's just so, it's just whatever. It's just another day. And I said, I don't agree. I think this is a really powerful time of year. This is a really exciting time of year. So Happy New Year. And it's funny because when I said that, the woman said, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. Happy New Year." So I'm kind of coming to you with that perspective, that I think this is a really exciting time of year. It's a time to release what doesn't serve me any longer. It's a time to let go of old patterns and beliefs, to make peace with the past. It's a powerful act of saying goodbye to one chapter and hello to another, and to just honor that this is part of the journey. It's no special a time than any other time in our journey. We're on a journey, and we're alive, and we have so much opportunity and so many possibilities to welcome in the new with an open heart and open arms. And so that's what I'm doing with you, for you, at you. No, that's not the right preposition. This is what I'm certainly doing for myself, and I want to share it with you because I share everything with you, mostly. mostly everything. So what I want to suggest is that I totally understand why people are telling you, and maybe you're telling yourself, to not create expectations that you can't meet. That is very different than creating intentions that you want to orient to. And I've talked about this before in my conferences. You've heard me talk about this on the podcast. I do think that a lot of people resist the idea of creating New Year's resolutions, often because they're setting themselves up for failure because our expectations are so high. When we set goals that are unattainable and unreasonable and unmeasurable, of course, that doesn't feel good when we just feel like we can't live up to them. So the problem for me isn't that we create goals. The problem is that we create unrealistic goals. And then we feel like failures because we've put ourselves in the position of not being able to attain them because we're human. We are practicing humans. And so we're not going to be perfect. And especially when we set a time frame, right? A very unreasonable time frame by which we want those things to happen. And so, of course, we're going to set ourselves up for failure, and we don't want to do that. And so we just do nothing at all. And I agree that we should not set ourselves up for failure. That's not what I want for you. But there is also nothing wrong with stretching ourselves a bit more, stretching our comfort zones, getting out of what makes us so comfortable that we become complacent or lazy or unchallenged. I'll speak for myself. That's not what I want for me. And that's not what I want for you. I also think there's something really powerful about declaring what we want to do or what we want to accomplish. There's something powerful about saying what we want to do. And again, I think that some people resist this because they feel like once they say it, now it's out there. And if they don't do it, then again, they're just disappointing themselves or somebody else. But I think there's something really powerful in saying it out loud, writing it down, drawing it out. And when I say declaring, I don't even mean you have to say it to someone else, because there's this whole idea that we should share these goals with other people so we can be accountable to them. I think we can and should be more accountable to ourselves than to anyone else. But of course, having an accountability partner can definitely be helpful, especially if you're someone who maybe isn't as true to yourself, or you don't take as seriously promises to yourself as you do take declarations to someone else, right? If that's the case, then certainly if part of the practice of you being able to follow through is you actually telling someone, then do that. Absolutely. But for me, by virtue of saying it and articulating it and writing it down, it being whatever we want, whatever we desire, whatever we want to create, however we want to live, whoever we want to attract into our lives, I think it creates a kind of clarity that we might otherwise lack. So I say this not to sound woo-woo and all about manifesting what we want, but I do believe in it. I have lived my life this way, to be honest. And it is backed by science. It is quite literally how we wire our brains towards something we want to achieve or receive. Saying what we want means we pivot in the direction of that thing. Otherwise, how would you know what direction to face? How else would your brain know what synapses to strengthen? Right? And so I do very much believe in manifesting what we desire. And that manifestation starts with declaring what we want so our brains can hear it. I've said, the universe can't hear you. Well, your brain can't hear you if you don't just say what you want. Your brain can't hear you. And there's a substantial body of research on this, specifically on this idea of neuroplasticity, right? The brain's ability to rewire itself by forming new neural connections. To deny declaring what we want is to deny it from happening because our brains will just keep triggering the old wiring. So that's what I do this time of year. That's why I think it's such an exciting time of year. I declare what I want. I declare what I want to create. And that's the first step in making what you want happen. And so some of what I'm going to share in terms of the ways to create a meaningful life, to create wonder and joy and compassion, are ways that we rewire our brain to actually manifest what we want. Okay? So this practice of rewiring our brains and manifesting our desires obviously is something we can implement every day. We don't have to just do it at the beginning of the year. But this is an opportunity, this time is an opportunity to do it. If you didn't do it yesterday, today is the day, right? Maybe not because it's the beginning of the year, but just because it's today. And today is the best place to start any practice of compassion, any practice of mindfulness, any practice at all. Today is the best time to start. It's the best day. And so if you're listening to this any time of the year, yes, I'm talking about New Year's, as I've been talking about the beginning of the year, but today is the best day to start. There's a wonderful line in the Tao Te Ching saying, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. I want to be the master of myself. I want to know myself more. I want to have self-wisdom. And that requires me to stretch myself, to choose self-awareness, to choose self-honesty, to choose humility, to choose courage, and to choose will. And I want to be really clear that I'm not saying that we have to constantly be in a mode of self-improvement. We absolutely need to embrace self-acceptance. But I do think for me, the whole idea is to love a little deeper, forgive a little more easily, respond a little less reactively, think a little more critically than I did the day before. And that only comes with self-awareness and a commitment to growth. And none of this has to begin as a New Year's resolution. We can do this anytime, right here, right now, this moment. So I'm looking forward to sharing the ways I do this, and I'm committed to doing this every year. Now, I'm listing 10 things, and I'm going to be sharing kind of my experiences of these 10 things, because I'm sincere when I say I do these things. And you might think, oh my God, that's a lot, especially within a day. Take from this what you want. Take some. You're not going to remember all of it, and all of it's not going to resonate with every single person. So take what resonates. Take one thing. Take two things, whatever. I'm kind of throwing everything at the wall. Sit back, by the way, get a cup of tea, because it's going to take a while, and enjoy, and I hope something resonates with you. The other reason I really cherish this time of year, it's because it's not just a time to look forward, it's a time to look back. And I don't look back in order to feel bad that I didn't do some of the things I set out to do the year before. But I do really, really like looking back in order to be grateful for what I have, in order to recognize what I've accomplished, in order to acknowledge what I've learned and how I've grown. And yeah, to assess in some ways also what I could have done better and what I need to do to move forward to do better. I mean, that's what this is about, right? And so I'm personally not afraid to look back on the past year. I think it's really helpful because I think we can forget. Sometimes I look back at the past year and went, oh my God, I did a lot. Or wow, I experienced a lot, or I felt a lot, or whatever it is, right? Sometimes I forget, and it's helpful to look back to just kind of take all that in. Now, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, but I like to do that. And that's one of the reasons I like writing this down, is because I can actually look back, right? Because I want to know what holds me back, what I need to do differently. If there's someone I need to make amends to, like if I'm expecting too much of myself, whatever it is, but it's just helpful for me. So I create my intentions and goals for the new year in a Google Doc, and I also do it in my journal. So I do both. And you've heard me talk about another tool that I use. I definitely long form journal, but I also have this line a day journal, and it's kind of poignant and nostalgic. And I just wrapped up a 5-year line a day journal. So these line a day journals, they're typically 5-year journals, and they're small, but they're thick. And I say it's a line a day. It's like 2 or 3 lines a day. And basically, you just basically have this entire journal for 5 years. And so I can see on every day the year before, the year before that, the year before that, the year before that. And this particular journal freaking started in 2020. Oh my God. I mean, I always love, like, sometimes I'll share it with David. I don't share everything in the journal with him, but sometimes we're sitting down having our morning tea or morning routine, and I'll be like, you want to hear what happened this time last year? You want to hear what happened this time in 2022? You want to hear what happened this time in 20? And so I'll share these things, and it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy, funny, helpful, sad, interesting to look back on the past 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years on one page. Frickin' 2020, man. That was a rough year. I'm not going to go through all my years with you, by the way. I'm not going to go through all my pages with you, but just remembering 2020 and even just like putting that book aside, it's kind of nostalgic to put it aside because that was a pretty significant 5 years. For me, it was. I think for most of us, the pandemic was a pretty significant year. And 2020 wasn't really much better. 2022, I mean, there was just, it was a real roller coaster ride after the worst of it, I think. The pandemic, the lockdown, for us here in California, the fires, for other people, there were storms and the drought here in California, millions of people dying from COVID, my mother dying in 2020, having a couple health scares in 2020 and surgeries in 2020 during COVID. My husband being in a very stressful work situation. I can see every day in 2020, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I am now opening a new book for 5 years, starting at the very beginning, January 1st, 2025. And most certainly there will be the good, the bad, and the ugly because it's life, because it's called life. Now, speaking of reflecting on the past year before I start the list, did you see my 2024 list of movies? So one of the things I do, I love creating lists, if it's not clear already. So you would have heard, if you listen to the podcast, the 2024 20 good news stories. So please go listen to that, or you can go find the blog post at joyfulvegan.com. Also, I mean, it's out there now. It was finished on December 31st, is my watch list from movies from 2024. Now, they're not movies that came out in 2024, but they're movies David and I watched in 2024, and we rank all of our movies and rate them. And I have descriptions of most of them, and I have the top 10, you can see them all ranked. And I have that from 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. So there's now 5 years of lists. I used to have more, but new website, lost the stuff. I don't know where it is. But if you're interested in seeing that, I will warn you, I do not watch a lot of rom-coms. So if you're looking for rom-coms, you will not find them on my list. Just go over and you'll see what I mean. So that's where we're at today. I am going to share with you what, for me, it looks like to operate from my highest self that I aspire to. Certainly don't meet all the time. That's why I'm a practicing human, but I want to be the most compassionate, the most joyful, the most generous, the most forgiving, the most understanding, the most peaceful person I can be. I know, tall order, whatever, that's my list. That's my goal. That's my aspiration. And in order to do that, in order to even scratch the surface of any of those, I need to practice and cultivate and document and reflect. Whatever we want to hone, if it's communication, wellness, engagement, quiet, strength, endurance, intelligence, acceptance, understanding, all require regular practice. Nothing comes for free. We have to hone the muscles we want to make stronger. We have to create and strengthen the new neural pathways to make the changes stick. So you can go listen to my 50 ways I create a meaningful life. And today you're going to hear 10 more. 10 more. And so sit back, and I hope this is something that resonates with you. So first of all, I want to thank you for being here. As I said, this is the 18th year of the Food for Thought podcast, and I'm going to be thanking some supporters a little later on. But I'm really grateful to be alive and here with you. My work still invigorates me, and it still moves me, and it still excites me. I have to do work sometimes to get there, to make sure that I'm not stale and just doing things by rote. So that's part of my work as well. But I feel incredibly grateful to still do this work and to have it still resonate with the people who follow me. So I just want to thank you, first of all. And I want to begin this year on a note of hope and intention. I think the world is a beautiful place. I know it's imperfect, but I want to do everything I can to add to its beauty and its awesomeness. Literally, its awesomeness. It is awesome. It just moves me so much. And so what I want to do is create as much of that awe and appreciate as much of that awe as possible. I do not have all the answers. I do not have all this in hand. These are some tools that I've picked up along the way in my 50 some years of living. I say that because I don't want this to, be dated. I'm a practicing human, just like everybody else. And so here are some of the things that I am doing to hone my human practice. Number one, stretch my comfort zones and do things that make me uncomfortable. Now, I don't mean I'm looking to be masochistic. I'm not looking to do things that are torturous. But for me, I think it's really important to do things that challenge me and stretch my comfort zones. Whenever we push ourselves to face something difficult, whether it's a new habit, hello 30-day vegan challenge, or any kind of personal challenge, we grow in ways that we don't expect. I'll speak for myself. I grow in ways that I don't expect. And that's part of the joy of it, not actually knowing what's going to come of it. Our favorite Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, there's no other Stoic emperor, by the way, Marcus Aurelius reminds us the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is why Ryan Holiday, who's the big kind of modern Stoic teacher, named his book "The Obstacle is the Way." Every obstacle is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to become more resilient. In other words, the very thing that stands in our path can be, might be, could be the key to our growth, could be the key to our success. So choosing discomfort for me, choosing struggle, they're not just they're there. Struggle and discomfort's there. But if I avoid them so completely, then I am missing out on opportunities to grow. Literally. And I can avoid things just as much as the next person. A lot. And there are certainly lessons that I have gained having looked away, having chosen willful blindness myself, having, kind of shied away from things that were uncomfortable. And guess what? Really painful. And guess what? I learned the lesson, but just in a really hard way. So the Stoic principle of doing something that's hard is all about creating the resilience so that when you do have to face that thing that's hard, you've been there, you kind of understand it. It's not so new that it's going to break you. And I love that. I love that. So first of all, for me, it's about identifying the things that I resist doing out of comfort, out of safety, out of fear, that in not doing might hold me back from this unexpected self-awareness growth. So for me, that's the first step. And that comes from self-honesty and self-awareness. But more practically speaking, it comes for me from journaling, just getting it out of my head, just journaling. And we're going to talk about journaling more below because it's actually its own habit. It's one of the 10. But exploring what comfort zones I need to stretch is the first step in then taking the steps to stretch them. But I have to be honest. So the comfort zones that we need to stretch, they might be physical, they might be emotional, they might be spiritual, they might be intellectual. That's what we have to discover. We might realize that we're avoiding having a difficult conversation or avoiding learning a new skill. Okay, here, this is so stupid. There's so many times I'm doing something that I find so annoying and I just hand it over to David. But I'm kind of avoiding actually doing the thing and practicing patience and learning and stretching the comfort zone to do this thing that's hard. It's a small, stupid example, but that's an example. So these decisions about what I need to stretch, they could be small, they could be large. It could be needing to pursue a new career opportunity, needing to relieve a relationship, right? But it's stretching my comfort zones to do so because it's painful. So doing something that's scary, and we don't have to do everything that's scary, but doing something that's scary that we're intentionally avoiding because it's scary is to step out of our comfort zone, is to stretch. The obstacle is the way. And so in 2024, one of the goals I had made was to focus on weight training in addition to cardio. And I 100% did that. It was to strengthen muscles, not just focus on calorie burning and cardio. Now, I didn't create specific goals, like I didn't measure myself or take before photos, but I can definitely see a noticeable difference in many of my muscle groups, and I intend to bump this up in 2025. And what that required me to do was lift heavier weights, right? It's very easy to just keep, doing something and you get used to the weight and then like there's no challenge. I mean, it's the best analogy. I think it's not a unique analogy, but for me it was literal and it was metaphorical because, in order to see the difference, you have to go heavier. You have to, when it becomes uncomfortable, keep going. And then when that becomes just the norm, you got to go heavier. The obstacle is the way. And so that's what I did in 2024. That's what I'm doing more of in 2025. Like motivation isn't my problem. I worked out every day. I work out every day. Like my problem is not motivation. My problem is getting frustrated that I don't see the results when I want to see the results for whatever I'm making a goal for. But I can say definitely in terms of progress. Now, here's where making a realistic versus an unrealistic expectation, here's the difference. I logged all of my workouts and I can say that I definitely progressed in terms of weights lifted and resistance added, right? And I was consistent. So, a goal that I think is unrealistic that people set, especially when it comes to fitness, is, I have no idea what, I don't know, I'm going to gain 3 inches of muscle in a month or even 6 months. I mean, that's still pretty ambitious. Or I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 2 months, right? Or, whatever. But like for me, the goals that I set are things like work out every day or, burn, 2,000 calories a day or, the walk 10,000 steps a day is a really good one. Do some kind of, walk or cardio for 45 minutes a day. Like those are goals. And yeah, you might slip and you might whatever, but that's different than making a goal based on results. For me, I make goals based on process. So I don't know if that helps, but that is definitely something I did. And that's what I did. But I'm going to be really honest with you. Like really, there's some like serious honesty in this episode. You're going to hear some serious. So you might need more than tea in this episode. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. There's some honesty happening. But honestly, that wasn't really a big stretch for me. Physical exercise is always something I've loved. I love to move. I love to feel strong. I love to feel fit. And once I decide to do something, it's as good as done. That's how my brain works. The comfort zone stretch for me is actually doing something that isn't easy. So let's get to that. Okay, so there's one more that was kind of middle of the road for me. So I had set myself a goal in 2024 to do dry January. And I'm doing it again right now as we speak. Now, was that a proper comfort zone stretch? A little, yeah. I don't have a problem with alcohol, but after a holiday season filled with a lot of indulgence, it is absolutely a stretch to change some habits from definitely the partying that happens, especially during the holidays and when we travel. And at the end of 2023, we had been to Alsace. That was a joyful vegan trip. It's at Christmas time. It's in the Alsatian region. It's Alsatian cuisine. It's very heavy, right? So obviously it's a region known for meat, dairy, and eggs, and we're not serving meat, dairy, and eggs, but it's vegan versions of them, and they're very heavy and filling. And wine flows. If you've been on a joyful vegan trip, wine flows. And so by January of 2024, it was really good to decide to do dry January, and it did require me to change some habits because I'm a creature of habit like anybody else. And what was really fun, what came out of it for me was certainly self-awareness. It was really good to identify what it is I get out of drinking wine or alcohol. And it's really interesting because I think it's no different than what anyone else has figured out, certainly about habit. And, like doing something different at the time. Like, I used to be a smoker like a long time ago. I know, shocking, right? Some of you have already heard me say that. But smoking, I think people will say like, yeah, I smoke because, that's what I do when I wake up. That's what I do after dinner. That's what I do, when I'm watching TV. And so you have to break the associations with that habit. And so for me, for wine or, whatever, it's mostly wine, I do not have such a stressful life that I need to end my workday with alcohol to relax. It's not that, but it's the ritual of ending my workday with with a glass of wine. And so that's what dry January demonstrated to me, was that it wasn't the wine. It was the ritual of having something different. Like I drink tea and water all day. Like that's just what I drink. So having a glass of wine, like in the evening at happy hour, especially with David or a friend, especially outside in the Ramada, in the wintertime, being outside in this covered structure we have, it's just really romantic. We're being in the living room and watching the sunset because the sunset's so early, so 4 o'clock. It feels different. It feels special. It feels ritualistic. And so, okay, so the idea of doing something different is the point. And so obviously that can be done without wine. Now, if I just drank a glass of water, is it the same thing? No, there's something around wine being a bit special. And so here's what's something that's really fun. This is for me. I'm totally going now inside baseball here. So if this is not interesting to you, you can just fast forward. So I have been someone who's never liked sparkling water. I hated it. Notice the past tense. Can I say hate it? I was not someone who drank sparkling water. I'm still someone who would say, give me flat water anytime, any day, cold flat water. And so one thing that was really fun in the beginning of 2024, when we were doing dry January, David joined me, made it a lot easier for the person I live with and love to do it with me. That definitely helped because we do kind of share our ritual drinking, the ritual wine drinking. And so one day he poured something in a glass and it was sparkling. It was fizzy. And he said, try it. And I was like, He said, just try it. And I took a sip and it was sparkling cucumber water. And I went, I kind of like this. This is interesting. The cucumber's so fresh, right? And what was interesting, this is Fever Tree. So if you've ever had Fever Trees like tonic or club soda, Fever Tree makes the best of all of this stuff. Very expensive, little tiny bottles, but still delicious. And so I took a sip and I was like, I really like this. And so that became kind of one of my rituals during dry January. And Shirley Temple's mocktails. David's kind of a whiz at cocktails, so I was pushing him a bit more to do mocktails. We didn't do a lot of mocktails, but I did do Shirley Temple's. I loved Shirley Temple's. But that's the thing, right? Even when I was young, like Shirley Temple's kind of makes you feel a little special. It's not the ginger ale you have, but it's a ginger ale with, grenadine and cherries. Like, so somehow that's more special. And then also we had a lot of dinner dates. And I will say there was a bit of like, oh God, we like going out to dinner and having wine. We like sharing wine with our friends. We live in California. We have a lot of wine, loving friends. And so I was like, oh, you know what? Super fun. Obviously, stretching the comfort zone, doing something different in a familiar place. It was really fun to go to the restaurants we were going to. And a lot of these are vegan restaurants that we love. One of them is Millennium, obviously. And one of them is Blossom and Root in Danville, and they had the most fabulous mocktails. So it was really fun to try some mocktails at restaurants. And so here I am in 2025, and here's what's fun. So if the whole like sparkling Fever Tree cucumber water, that continued throughout the year. At Christmas, a friend of mine brought another one of the Fever Tree flavors. I didn't like it. It was grapefruit. I didn't like it as much. However, I made a simple syrup of hibiscus because I love hibiscus. I drink hibiscus water all the time. And I will say hibiscus water, just infused hibiscus, just in water. And I do cold infusions. I don't do hot infusions. So I keep a bottle of hibiscus infused water in the refrigerator at all times. I love it. But what I did, in addition to just my regular hibiscus water, I made a simple syrup of hibiscus. And I have been making, I don't know what I'm doing making mocktails. I don't make cocktails. That's not my sweet spot is cooking. David's is cocktails. I keep saying mocktails, is cocktails. So I've been like kind of trying my hand at it and kind of getting pretty good. So I made a mocktail with my hibiscus simple syrup. And I did it with the sparkling water, the cucumber, but what was, no, there was a plain one. But what was interesting, no, it was a club soda. And what was interesting is that I'm starting to understand like the difference between club soda and sparkling water, because I know you're like, how can you just be learning this at 50 something? Because like sparkling beverages were not my thing. There was a time like I wouldn't even drink champagne because I didn't like the bubbles. So this is really new for me. And so I did it with club soda, my little hibiscus mocktail, and it was okay. David was like, it doesn't know what it wants to do because there's a little bit of saltiness because of the club soda, and it's sweet because of the simple syrup. So we called it the limbo. So that's what I'm calling my mocktail. However, the next time I went to go make this, we didn't have any more club soda. We had a sparkling water for, like, the times we have friends over and they don't drink. And so I made it with, anyway, I am experimenting and it is so much fun. And so I can say now I'm kind of getting into sparkling water and club soda and kind of understanding that, and tonic. And I hated tonic, but my little Fever Tree sparkling cucumber actually has some quinine in it. And quinine is what makes tonic tonic. And I didn't like tonic because I don't like things that are like kind of bitter, and quinine kind of has a little bit. Anyway, I'm liking all this stuff. Guess what? I wouldn't have learned any of that if I hadn't stretched my comfort zones and did a dry January. So yeah, I'm gonna be really honest. Yeah, like that's kind of a comfort zone stretch for me. Dry January, not because it's like so hard to not drink for a month, but because it does pull me out of what is comfort and familiar, and it's been really fun. So that is where, kind of being really honest about stretching your comfort zones. It can't just be just doing what you already do and you already like. It has to be something that's different. And so I am stretching my comfort zones in other ways. I will talk about it right now, and I'll say it very briefly. So I told you this is going to be no, I don't want to talk about it. There are ways that I'm also stretching my comfort zones. So I'm not going to get into detail. The most significant way I stretched my comfort zone in the last few years, that continues to spill into 2025, has been my effort to reconnect with my sister, with whom I have been estranged for 30 years. So that for me goes into the first item of stretching your comfort zones, but it's also related to my second item. But just to dwell on that first one for a moment, stretch your comfort zones. Be honest with yourself first and foremost about what those things would be, and do something that's hard. Do something that's difficult. Okay, I'll say, no, I don't want to say which mine is. I'm not going to say what mine is. I'll talk about it next year and then I can report back. I'm not going to tell you everything. God. Okay, so that's number one, is stretch your comfort zones. That is a really, really significant way to live a meaningful life. Number two, challenge long-held beliefs and assumptions. Beliefs about myself, beliefs about others, beliefs about the world. Now, I have always fancied myself as someone who is willing to let go of old assumptions and patterns. I am. I have always been interested in human psychology. I have always been interested in personal growth. I have always been interested in self-discovery. I am not kidding you. Ever since I was little, I can remember being the person who was always interested in being better, okay? So I think that is already true about myself. I mean, I've just been a student, right? So I'm always willing to look at like what I need to know more of. I've always been willing to look at what beliefs or assumptions about the world and other people were, and how those beliefs don't serve me for one reason or another. So the truth is that has been a thread throughout my life. However, each one that I've done, like when I consciously make a decision to challenge my long-held beliefs, it's been life-changing. Life-changing. And again, that starts with being willing to see what long-held beliefs or assumptions I have about the world or other people or myself that I might need to challenge. So it requires a lot of courage and a lot of self-honesty. Now, one thing I've talked about a little bit here and there was my relationship with my mother. Changing my relationship with my mother was a lifelong journey, and lifelong until she died in 2020. It was a long journey, and a lot of it came from challenging my perception of her and my assumptions about her. I do think, I'm going to be really honest with you folks, some of it comes from aging. I do think we're more willing to do this as we get older. So if you're 20 and listening to this, please do it now or start now. But I think it's going to come easier for you as you get into your 40s. And that is just, I think, what's true. But another example of where I did this, there's another big example I don't really want to share right now. But there is a huge example of this that that I very much dove into and endeavored to understand better because I didn't understand this thing and I wanted to, and I went deep into exploring how I could challenge my kind of knee-jerk reaction to it. I'm being vague on purpose. And it was life-changing for me, kind of changing the way I see the world. It doesn't change the way who I am, but it definitely changes the way I see how other people are, right? So another example of where I did this, where I wanted to challenge long-held beliefs and perceptions and assumptions, was regarding my sister. So high level, what does this mean and how does this look? And what did it look like for me in this instance? High level is, in challenging our long-held assumptions, is number one, deciding or knowing or declaring that my perception, my view, my perspective is not the truth. It's a truth, but it's not the truth. My perception of any person or situation is shaped by my personal experiences, my biases, my limited information. So that's number one, is my view is not the truth. And that means also the judgment that tends to be on these perceptions, it's also not right. It's just my view. Number two is what is required to challenge assumptions is to cultivate curiosity. Not judgment, not going to a situation or a person or an understanding of a thing with these assumptions, but actually stepping back and going, I don't know much. Tell me more, right? Say this to yourself or whatever, right? But approaching ideas and beliefs and people with a willingness to question why they exist and how they hold up under scrutiny. Certainly when it comes to my belief of a thing, my perception of a thing. Why? Why do you think that? How well does that hold up? Let me dig deeper and kind of probe more. So cultivating curiosity is number two. And then number three is, as I kind of already alluded to, being open to changing my perspective, being willing to question my assumptions, and being willing to be wrong. I've said before, I kind of love being wrong. I love being right, but I love being wrong because what comes from being wrong is so much more wisdom and so much more awareness and so much more growth. And so that's what I mean when I say I love being wrong, because when I went into a situation, thought I knew the answers, and was completely wrong, especially when it's like, no, you were really wrong, right? Because I believed my perception was correct. And then it was like, no. I make leaps and bounds in terms of growth. I really have experienced the most amount of growth when I've been wrong, especially when I've been wrong about people I thought were wrong. There's another line. Guess what? I have another quote from the Tao. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? Like, just the people I think have nothing to teach me are the ones who teach me the most. The situations, whatever it is, but like, yeah, it's pretty powerful. Especially people I think are, again, wrong, deceived, unstable, whatever. Like, those are the people I learn the most from. So those are some of the ways I have been able to challenge my assumptions, particularly when it came to my sister and my relationship with her. Now, I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to give you all the details of my traumatic childhood. I am not going to do that. The wounds I experienced were exactly the things that made me the person I am today, strong and resilient and compassionate, and also vulnerable and limited and imperfect. But very briefly, let's just say all the early crap that led to my having a strained relationship with my mother is also what led to a strained, to say the least, relationship, and then a estranged relationship with my sister, whose name is Lori. I don't think I've really ever said her name. Her name's Lori. So I had many, many, many years of a volatile and difficult and violent relationship. And so with her, and so when I was about 22, 23, 24, I mean, there were several different breaks. I just said, I'm done. And I stepped away from what for me was a toxic, unsafe relationship. To say that I was terrified of my sister is an understatement. Not physically terrified, though there was some of that, but mostly terrified of her anger and what I perceived of disdain for me, like animosity. Like I could feel the animosity and the hatred and the loathing like dripping off of her. And that's how I felt after years of trying to reconcile with her from when we were young. And so I just felt like I needed to end that malice. And so I needed to step away. And besides, I moved to California from New Jersey. And so I would see her here and there because we share a family. And I would see her at weddings. I would see her at family events. But I would have so much anxiety. You don't even know. Someday I'll write a book. You have no idea the amount of anxiety that I would experience knowing that she would be somewhere, because there had been so much trauma that we both experienced and we were both managing in our own ways. And one of the ways I was experiencing her trauma was just the venom. And so being 3,000 miles away helped, of course. And I was never like unkind to her. I never wished her ill. I knew she was wounded, like I was wounded, and I just needed to protect myself. But like, I mean, like I flew back for her wedding. Like we moved to California in 98. I think she got married in 99. She did not make me feel very welcome, but I did I was like, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go to her wedding. She didn't come to mine, but I went to hers, right? But I definitely felt much safer and healthier not being exposed to what felt very harmful to me, like being in her presence. Now, eventually she moved to Florida. My father went with her. And as I'm recording this, my father just celebrated his 93rd birthday, which is insane because he was like on hospice 2 years ago. And then last year they graduated him out of hospice. It's insane. This man is just going to live forever. So she moved to Florida. My father went with her, and the chaos that was my sister's life and a lot of it related to my father continued. And I was very happy to be away from all of it. It's very complicated. It really is complicated. I really have talked for decades about potentially writing a book someday. I have to figure out what the intention is. And maybe the intention is because it's still being written now. The story is still being written. So I think I'm getting an idea of what maybe the intention would be. But long story short, even though I felt really good not being connected like to all the craziness, I did not have a relationship with her. I had my own opinion of her. I had stories about her that I would tell myself to protect myself, right? To not go into harm's way. Now, were those stories true? Not necessarily, but they were my stories. I mean, I say not necessarily because, again, they were my stories. There is no like, kind of objective truth. And I purposely, like I said, I did not speak of her unkindly when I spoke of her at all. And I would defend her when someone spoke ill of her, like when my father would. But I had beliefs and assumptions that shaped the way I saw her and shaped the way I did or did not interact with her. And look, some of these perceptions were sometimes validated. Sometimes, of course, I did things wrong, but sometimes there were times where like I would, nope, okay, yep, great, really glad I'm not wrapped up in that. And I would continue to self-protect. But fast forward to a few years ago, leaving out some seriously, seriously messy things when my mother was declining and eventually died, I noticed that I started having empathy and compassion for my sister in a way that I hadn't before. Now, she had also had a difficult relationship with my mother, but whereas my mother and I got to a different place a good decade before she died, my sister never did. And I realized around the time my mother was declining how much pain my sister must be in, and I let that sink in. And then time would pass, and I would get some abrupt text from my sister about my father, usually, like the help she needed or whatever. And like all of my feelings of anxiety and terror and fear would like flood back. And I would go to David with my phone and I'd go, like, cause there was a text. And he was like, just, yeah, what? It's just a text. And I'd be like, I know, I don't know. Like I did not know how to handle it because it was just so anxiety producing. It just felt like a reinvigoration of like it just like brought back everything every time I would get a text. And the text wouldn't be like, "Hi, how are you? I hope you're well." It would be just this abrupt, kind of like Molotov cocktail being thrown, and that's what it felt like to me. And so that's how much power I let her have over me. And it's also the power I had over this narrative had over me. These assumptions, these old assumptions, these long held beliefs, right? Because I'm reacting now to experiences that happened 30 years ago, right? And so that's when I started realizing I was holding on to these beliefs and assumptions that weren't or didn't have to be true. And then David said something to me that probably changed everything. I think it was the thing he said that changed everything. And he said, kind of practically speaking, he was like, that text she can't hurt you. She can't hurt you. She can't hurt you anymore. She can't hurt you. And it didn't mean because she wouldn't try, but even though she hasn't, and that wasn't the truth either, right? Because that would have been my first, but yeah. And it didn't mean that is because she changed and, she wasn't going to hurt me. And it didn't mean that she couldn't hurt me because I was 3,000 miles away. It meant I was 30 years away from where I had been when I started creating that narrative. And so was she. Like realizing that, like, of course I had changed, but so did she, assuming she did, right? I'm going to assume she did. I'm not going to hold on to the assumption that she is still the same person she was 30 years ago. I wasn't. The other part of it was realizing that I'm okay. Like, I had changed in 30 years. I'm a different person than I was. I have tools. I'm mature. I'm self-aware. I'm stronger. I'm more resilient. I'm more supported. I have confidence. I have skills, right? That I didn't have 30 years before or 20 years before, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this has been part of this continuum. So I didn't have to operate under these old assumptions, this old narrative that she was terrifying and I was powerless. And so that one thing David said, this was like a few years ago. This wasn't that long ago. 2 years ago? Maybe few years ago. Maybe a few years ago. But look, it wasn't that long ago. And so he just said that one thing that made me realize that it was totally understandable that I had protected myself when I did. But it also made me aware that I had to keep telling myself a particular story in order to keep protecting myself and justify doing so. And so I started challenging these old assumptions. And just as I had done with my mother, I started tiptoeing into asking not why isn't she the sister I wish she could be, whatever. And I asked instead, what kind of sister do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? What can I give that I'm willing to give? What can I give that she's unable to give? What's the lack I can fill? How can I help? And of course, how can I do this responsibly with boundaries and not recklessly, right? So I didn't like, go into this just saying like, oh, I'm just going to have this great relationship with her and, I'm just going to go, dissolve all my boundaries and protection. It wasn't like that. But I did go into it wanting to change some of the thinking that I had about her. And every time we had a new interaction, it did challenge those assumptions. And I'd go, oh, I didn't expect that. That's not how she reacted, I don't know, 30 years ago. Of course, right? And so it is mind-blowing to even say these things out loud and to communicate this. It's unbelievable that we could be where we are today if only our mother could see us. So to say that this is a profound, monumental shift is an understatement. And the story is still under construction. I mean, it is still unfolding, but a foundation has been laid and words can't even express it. The last time I was there, it was in October of last year and I was stuck during that awful hurricane. And we were sitting at her kitchen table at one point, we're having a glass of wine. And I just said, like, does it blow your mind that I'm sitting here now talking to you from across your table? And she goes, oh yeah, no, can't even, nope, just crazy. It is insane. It is insane. And what I didn't say was that my sister and I, by the way, are almost as opposite as they come. Not in always, because it turns out we actually, have some things in common, obviously, well, hopefully. But we are pretty opposite. How we live, how we vote, what we believe, and none of that matters. The differences don't matter to me. The past doesn't matter to me. All I want to do is build and repair and create and challenge old beliefs and assumptions. And every time a new one is burst, it is like I don't know how to, maybe it's like a new synapse being forged. It's a new connection. And that connection keeps building a stronger and stronger. I'll just say that each new connection builds a foundation, and that foundation has been, getting stronger, but it just builds a foundation with each new connection. And that only comes from challenging those old beliefs and assumptions. And that goes for other relationships as well. Where can I challenge assumptions about this person, this relationship? Where can I do that? Are there people I need to kind of go back to and apologize to about something? And certainly there probably are. I know there are. And all of this is incredibly humbling. Every time I reach out to my sister, I feel like a little sister. I feel like a little, but not in a bad way, not in a way that makes me feel so vulnerable that I want to run. It just makes me go, okay, I'm opening myself up a little bit more now. And it's scary because I don't know what's going to happen. And I have shed many tears in the last couple years that we've been on this journey together. She has no idea how many tears I've shed. And I can say all this because she's never going to listen to this, but mostly in a way that, because I'm really trying to manage my own expectations. So all of this is really humbling. It's really vulnerable, but what makes it possible is being open and being curious and being vulnerable and being trusting and being mindful. And that is the third item on my list of how to live a meaningful life. Mindfulness is always front and center for me. It's why I'm vegan. It's why I talk about compassion. It is about mindfulness, about living my life in a way that is thoughtful. I mean, that's just another way of saying it, right? And so I've spoken about mindfulness before. I've spoken about loving kindness meditation before, which really is kind of one of my big touchstones for mindful living. But there's a lot of other ways that I live mindfully. I mean, even the loving kindness meditation, like I don't do it every day, and I always aspire to do it every day. And, so that's one of my goals for 2025 is to just do it every day for 15 minutes. And that's all it takes. Right now I do it a few times a week. And I also orient myself to the loving kindness meditation throughout the day, even if I didn't sit and do it. So it is a really powerful practice, and it can be implemented in every way. It doesn't have to just be through this, kind of sitting. I've talked about it before. It's a guided process. You can I don't know if you heard that little click, but I actually just got a WhatsApp notification because I'm actually doing a mindfulness challenge with someone I connected with through the Nonviolent Communication Center, and she's leading a 30-day mindfulness challenge. And I just got a notification about a new meditation that is up. So in addition to doing my loving kindness meditation, I'm also kind of exploring some of these other mindfulness practices. So anyway, back to the loving kindness meditation. You can do it with a guide. You can listen to a podcast. There's actually one on YouTube that I use. I actually recorded one for my Patreon supporters. So I forget which level it's at, but it's one of the perks. You can also just memorize whatever the prompts are and do it yourself. So it's totally up to you how you want to do it. But the idea is to repeat specific phrases over and over the course of however long you want to sit. I'll say sit 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And the idea, and there's different phrases, but they typically are may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be peaceful, may I live with ease. There's all different variations of those. And you start with may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be peaceful, may I live with ease. So you direct those wishes to yourself, and you kind of feel all of that in your cells. You just kind of feel that. And so, of course, the idea is that you have to cultivate compassion for yourself before you can share compassion with others. So once you kind of get all that inside your body and your cells and your mind, then you start to extend outward those same wishes. And so you start with someone you love, someone you know well, someone you are affectionate towards. So it's very easy to think of them and be all warm and fuzzy and send those wishes to them. So once again, as you're sitting, I just really love the idea that first you start with, you think of that person, you imagine them sitting in front of you, and you say, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be peaceful, may you live with ease. But first you're kind of feeling that inside your body again, and then you send it out to them. So I just love that again. It just kind of A, starts with you, but B, also really demonstrates that interconnectivity we have. So the third one is you think of an acquaintance. So again, you're also kind of just observing in your own body how it feels to give compassion to yourself, how it feels to give compassion to someone else, and how it feels to give compassion to someone who's neutral. There's probably different levels of feeling as you're doing that. And then I'll say the last one, but then you think of someone with whom you have conflict, someone with whom you might have enmity, someone with whom you might, have difficulty with right now, or anger toward, or fear about, or whatever. Believe me, my sister made her way into that particular category for many, many years. And then I do end with, expressing compassion, wishing compassion for all living beings. And that's how I usually end. And then I kind of go back and do, kind of each one very, just one mantra for each one, may all living beings be happy, be healthy, be peaceful, and live with ease. And then you just kind of end it. And so it's just really powerful. So whatever practice works for you, it doesn't have to be the love and kindness meditation, but any kind of mindfulness approach that works for you, go for it. Now, I'm going to go on to the fourth one, which is another way to practice mindfulness, but I'm going to keep it on its own category because it's something that I've been practicing separate from my love and kindness meditation, and I have been finding it really powerful and really helpful. Some of you probably already do this already, but I'm going to share a technique with you that I've been doing, and I find it really powerful. So this is deep breathing, specifically breathing that engages the parasympathetic nervous system. And we all need to engage the parasympathetic nervous system more. So I'll talk about that. So breathing is something we do automatically, obviously. I don't know about you, but I've noticed something about myself when I pay attention to my breathing. I notice how shallow my breathing is, and I notice how often I hold my breath without realizing it. So that's been something that's really interesting. And that's, where we're holding stress is kind of where we're holding our breath. And I experience stress just like everybody else. And I don't want to hold it. And I also want to learn techniques for kind of a moment when I'm feeling really angry, like if I'm reacting, and I'm like a very quick reactive person. So I'm looking for techniques for also just like managing it in that moment, not just like, oh, I've had a stressful day, I want to like breathe better. It's actually also learning some tools for how do I manage right then and there when I'm about to react to something out of anger, out of, impatience or what have you. And this practice has actually been incredibly helpful. So what do I mean when I'm talking about this parasympathetic nervous system? Okay, so the parasympathetic nervous system is the system that, when activated, promotes relaxation, lowers blood pressure, slows the heart rate, helps digestion. It is the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the system that controls fight or flight. Right. So when we have stress, our bodies go into this fight or flight response. And that's when we go into this like seriously, right, heavy breathing, really stressed out mode. And that's what actually does very much scientifically cause a lot of internal problems. And so we want to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system as much as possible, as opposed to the fight or flight. So kind of that reaction that I'm talking about when I like get really angry, immediately my heart is racing. Immediately I'm kind of getting flushed. I'm, I can feel my blood pressure rising, right? And in all those ways, that's what it means to tap into the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight or flight response. So I don't want to just be this reactive fight or flight, primitive person. I want to go to a place and learn to go to the place that actually is going to enable me to cope, but in a way that is productive and that obviously is much less stressful. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. You can just do like deep belly breathing, like diaphragmatic breathing. Like there's plenty of people who do that. But the technique you've probably heard of before is something called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. And I really like it. So you can sit down, you can lie down, whatever it is. The idea is to inhale through your nose. You always hear that. Inhale through your nose. In this case, the 4-7-8 refers to the number of seconds. So inhale through your nose for a count of 4 seconds. Hold your breath for a count of 7 seconds. And then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 8 seconds. Now you can repeat this cycle for 4 rounds, for 6 rounds, for 10 rounds, whatever you want. But the idea is to do 4, 7, 8. Inhale through your nose for 4, hold your breath for 7, exhale for 8. And so the idea is to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is one of the ways that we can do that, signaling the body to relax. And I can do that on my own, but I actually found an app I really liked called I Breathe. And it's very simple. I searched for a very simple app and I like it. And I actually don't do notifications for most apps, but I actually like it because you can set when you want a reminder. So if I don't do it in the morning when I do my love and kindness meditation, I will set it for the afternoon. And I actually really like the moment where I'm doing something and I get this notification that says, breathe. I like that. I like that very much. And so that is what I've been doing. And that is why it's been working. And what the idea is that, you build up these muscles for breathing, deep breathing. And so not only the muscles so that you feel more, you feel less stressed throughout the day because you're doing this throughout the day, or you're doing this practice daily, hopefully. But for me also, it is quite literally the thing I am now habitually going to when I find myself getting annoyed or angry or whatever. I actually go, okay, gotta breathe. And so we hear that all the time, right? People say that all the time. Just breathe, like just take a breath, right? I mean, I remember saying that to my mother, like when she would get annoyed or something, but none of us do it. I mean, and also you get defensive when someone just says, take a breath. Just breathe. Why don't you just breathe? You just get defensive. You're just like, shut up. I'm not like, what? You're just evading the issue here. So I have been doing that with myself. I'll go, okay, breathe. And then I hold it and then I exhale it. And it's actually been really good because I'm learning a new tool. And it's a wonderful tool for children, to teach children or anyone who deals with kind of anger issues. Tip from the hip, try it. Number 5. One of my themes this year, there's a couple themes I have, like overarching themes. And this is kind of related to mindfulness as well. But my theme this year in 2025 is to monofocus, to be completely present. So again, it's kind of around mindfulness, right? Breathing, whatever. But this is specifically around not multitasking. Multitasking is way overrated. A lot of data are coming out now talking about how detrimental it is for our health to multitask, certainly detrimental to our brains. And it's something I prided myself on for decades. I am never going to stop being who I am. I am never going to be this kind of slow. I'm never going to be my husband. We are very different temperamentally. I am always going to be fast moving. I am always going to be action oriented. I am always going to be goal oriented. And, I'm a woman. So sorry, but like women, I think do multitask naturally and pretty well, but there's a limit. There's multitasking and there's too much multitasking. And I have definitely been guilty of too much multitasking. So one of my goals this year, and I've, kind of practiced this here and there over the years, but one of my goals is to really focus on monotasking. And in fact, it's kind of like a joke in our house that I can multitask like a demon. And David knows himself so well because he'll be like, no, I can only do one thing at a time. Like to the degree that sometimes he's driving and I'm talking and I'm like, hi, you're not listening. And it's like, well, I'm driving. Like you can drive and talk at the same time. He focuses on one thing at a time, which I used to say, oh, Lord. Now I'm like, that is an art. That is an art, and it's something I aspire to. And guess what? There is a concept in the Tao Te Ching that I love and that has resonated with me and that applies here. And it goes like this. There's one of the chapters that starts, express yourself completely, then keep quiet. Be like the forces of nature. When it blows, there is only wind. When it rains, there is only rain. Like, what? I love that. So I've been saying that to myself and I've been sharing that with friends. When it rains, there is only rain. So when I'm like, making tea in the morning and then I want to like check my phone or, I don't know, do a number of other things while I'm like making the tea, I just say when it rains, there is only rain. Just focus on what it is, just what it is in that moment. So if it's conversations or spending time with, I actually think I aspire to, I hope I'm a good listener. I really am one of those people who puts my phone away when I am with people. I really can't stand being with friends who, like, if they get any kind of notification, they check their phone. Like, you're with me here. Why are you doing that? Shut your notifications off. Shut your phone off. Put your phone away. So I am someone who does that naturally. But look, I mean, I get distracted, whatever. So when I'm talking to people, but even being by myself, it's not just with other people. I want to be present in the moment. So that is one of my goals, is to just practice deep focus. And I have been doing it, and it requires for me definitely changing some habits, because it is so natural for me to multitask. But for me, it's not just multitasking, it's actually getting distracted. And again, there are like really high costs to being distracted. There's data that says a single distraction can significantly impact productivity, taking an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to regain full focus. So imagine you're in the middle of writing something, writing anything, I don't know, a report, a chapter, an email, or doing any kind of work that requires focus. You get distracted, you check your phone, you check your email, you go over there, you look away. It takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to regain full focus, for your brain to like focus completely. So there's also data that it like increases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which contributes to that stress that we're trying to mitigate through our breathing and through our mindfulness. It increases anxiety levels, the cortisol and adrenaline. And so for me, the idea is to, in all ways I can, to just really practice deep work, deep focus, not being distracted. And so what does that mean? I'm someone who works well in stints. I've always done that. I will decide I'm going to work for an hour, write for an hour, put on a timer for 30 minutes, and then shut my email off, shut my phone off, and write. And what's really interesting is when I do this, I can tell and I'll turn my phone off, and I can tell that when I want to go reach for my phone, and I'll go, oh, it's off, right? So this is going to take a long time. I mean, because I can go in and out of this. Sometimes I do it well, sometimes I don't. So I'm really trying to make this a priority for this year. And so that works for me, prioritizing exactly what I want. That's actually pretty easy for me, kind of creating a list, but it's about sticking to it. And again, self-honesty is such a huge thing. Then there's also just like kind of minimizing those distractions. Now, I don't have a lot of notifications. There is one app that has a lot of notifications, and that's my Ring app, because I really like to see the wildlife when I get a notification. Like, so I'll get a notification, and I'm like, oh, and it's a deer, and it's a squirrel, or oh, there's a cat here. What? Or we live so high up from the street that when I get a notification that someone's at the garage, I want to make sure I know who it is. So that is a little hard for me. I have to kind of figure out how I'm going to navigate that, because one of the reasons we have cameras is because it could be someone who's a danger. We've had things happen here at the house that I just want to make sure, I'm checking. So I don't know how I'm going to have to figure that out. But one thing I do is, when reading or meditating or doing my morning writing, is I use the Forest app. I've talked about this before, I think. Any kind of app that blocks distractions. So I like the Forest app because it's kind of in my sweet spot around my value system. So you're growing a tree in, like, you can choose 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, and it grows a tree in that time. And if you go to your phone and you check it, this tree will die. The tree will die. And so that's not okay. That's not okay with me. So I'm using an app like Forest that does help a lot. So that's what I'm doing. I'm also just trusting that time will create new habits, and be patient with myself, and just kind of, I find myself laughing sometimes, especially when I go to reach for my phone and go, no, why? It's off, right? I mean, sometimes I do get frustrated too when I start to multitask, but I'm honestly taking baby steps and just being patient with myself. So that is number 5, monotasking. Number 5, monotasking. Do you remember number 4? What was number 4? So number 5 is being fully present and monotasking. Number 4 is deep breathing. Number 3 is mindfulness, however you choose to practice mindfulness. Number 2 is challenging long-held assumptions and beliefs. And number 1 is stretching. your comfort zones. And so we've got 5 more to do. Do we have 5 more to do? Yeah, we've got 5 more to do. There's a part of me that wants to split this up, but I'm going to be really honest. I'm on a roll. I'm just going to keep going. I want to cover all 10 items. I want this to be out there for you for the beginning of the new year for all the reasons I said in the beginning. So I'm just going to keep going and do 10. Before we keep going, I am going to take a quick break and take a sip of my hibiscus water that's right next to me. I'm also going to thank our listener supporters, and I'm going to make a few quick announcements, but I really do need to thank all of you for your support. This is listener supported, and we have an incredible community of people over at Patreon. So if you'd like to join us, and I'm going to be doing a lot more over at Patreon, Patreon. So please join me over there at any level. We have a new bestie. We have different levels, and Judy just joined at the bestie level. And Judy, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly. I want to say tower in one hand. I want to say tower. In the other hand, I want to say toffer. So please tell me how to pronounce your name. And I will be sure to pronounce it as I thank you each time in the episode. So thank you for being a new bestie. We've had so many just like incredible people who have supported this podcast for so long. And I'm just going to name everyone who's a bestie right now. Ritika Kaula, Josie Russo, Devin St. Clair, Paula McCloskey, Devra Stein, Susan Kiger, Liv Larson, Melissa Amarillo, Patty H. Thank you so much. And we've also got some incredible heroes. These are $50 a month heroes. Angelica Torres Lofton, Karma Whitford for so long, Rachel Lovell for so long, Jennifer Statmiller, are you kidding me, for so long, PJ Schuster, who was just with us in Rwanda, who was with me at my house several years ago as part of one of my conferences, one of my Compassion in Action conferences. Tina Atwell, who's been on so many trips of ours. Liz D, who is a force to be reckoned with. Ranjini Mohan for so long. And then I have a couple angels as well. My $100 a month angels, Risa Rybakov and Brooke Boussard. You are amazing. You're all amazing. And I'm so excited to have all of you in my community, along with subscribers at all levels. But thank you. I'm going to be reaching out to all of you to have a little January live chat. So look for that invitation in your inbox. And if you'd like to join us, please go over to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You get this amazing community of like-minded people. You get bonus material, behind the scenes, discounts, and more. And I'm using Patreon the way a lot of people right now are using Substack, because I already have this incredible community. I don't want to change platforms, because some people have been like, why don't you have a Substack? Because I don't want to go and like create a whole other subscription-based program. I've got a subscription-based platform right now, and it's Patreon. So I am using it like one would use Substack. So I'm adding more resources over there, more behind the scenes, as I said, just a lot more connection with my community and encouraging more community among everybody. So that's what's happening over there, and there's going to be a lot more of that. So you can go to joyfulvegan.com, click on donate, or whatever you need, just ping me and ask me, and I'm happy to let you know how to do it if you didn't find the link. Also, just a very friendly beginning of the month announcement to those of you who are Patreon supporters, and I'll put this in your account. Well, if you don't see it, if you haven't renewed your credit card, you're not going to see it. So I'm announcing it here. Hundreds of people have pledged their support and think they're supporting, but their credit cards have declined and they don't realize it. And it's just, I don't have the bandwidth to chase people down. I'm not going to do that. So I'm just putting it out there. Can you just go over to your account, everyone who's a Patreon supporter, $5 a month, $10 a month, any level, and just make sure your credit card is up to date. A couple other announcements. Please, if you haven't already pre-ordered A Year of Compassion, it's coming out in March. And pre-orders help so much. And I'm also offering some thank you gifts. There's going to be a drawing for some thank you gifts if you do pre-order and then just register it over at joyfulvegan.com/pre-order. Related to that, I am taking interest right now, gathering interest in a conference in March. It's going to kind of coincide with the launch of the book on compassionate living, hope, having hope, cultivating compassion and cultivating hope. So you can go over to joyfulvegan.com and see that over there as well under events. I have some new ebooks in the works I'm really excited about. I have a New Year, New You ebook coming out, and I can't wait to share that with you, because yeah, I can't wait to share it with you. So that's coming out. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say was don't forget to go look at the trips. We have one spot left now in Croatia, and we have one spot in Dordogne. And that is it for 2025 for me. Also, there are trips that World Vegan Travel runs that I am not part of. They are just run by World Vegan Travel, who are amazing. There's nobody else I would do trips with ever, ever, ever. And everyone who's been on our trips will say they've spoiled them. They don't want to do trips with other people because World Vegan Travel is the best. They have a trip to Botswana in 2026, and they have a trip to Thailand coming up in 2025. And if you are interested in either of those trips, I want you to go to joyfulvegantrips.com and you can go and find out more information. Click on either of those trips. If you use the discount code when you're booking your spot, either in Thailand or Botswana, if you use Joyful Vegan, you'll see that there's some perks there in that I'm offering as gifts, as incentives for you to join. It's probably enough for you to just go because the trips are amazing. But if you are interested and you've heard about it through me, it really helps if you could just put in Joyful Vegan and you'll get some special prizes, discounts, gifts. Prizes sounds weird. And you also get to go on an incredible trip. So head over to joyfulvegantrips.com for all of those. Okay, moving on to number 6. This is always on my list. You've probably heard it before. You heard me talk about it in the beginning, but journaling, just journaling. I've been journaling for decades. I'll be honest. I've burned, ripped up, discarded, shredded, just like some journals recently. And there's just some things I'm good. Like I did it. It was cathartic, but I don't need to keep looking back. So I mean it when I say like I look back, but I don't always want to look back, or I certainly don't want to dwell on the past. And so long form journaling, just doing it daily, is something that is really powerful for me. And again, like me, I'm just like everybody else. So like I was getting a little away from my long form journaling and just doing my line a day as part of my morning routine, but I'm really back to long form journaling. And one of the inspirations for that, certainly the Stoics, they talk about making sure that you cultivate, kind of daily journaling. And I really love their suggestion for journaling in the morning, but also journaling at night and kind of looking back on the day. So again, it's this idea of reflection and what do I need to do better tomorrow? But another inspiration has been, if you've read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, it was a bestseller many, many years ago. She recommends morning pages as a core practice to unlock creativity, to clear mental clutter, to foster self-awareness, to manifest what your desires are. David started doing these morning pages years ago. David's a hero. David journals daily, religiously. He's been doing that. Well, he did stop for a while, but he's been doing the journaling for the last couple years daily. And so morning pages just basically involves writing 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness thoughts first thing in the morning. It could be worries, ideas, dreams, hopes, mundane observations, taking out the garbage, doesn't matter. And it is, what's required is writing it with a pen on a pad, in a journal, not typing it. And so the idea is to not create polished writing, but to just release whatever's on your mind, allowing you to start the day with a clear and open perspective. So try that, or any kind of journaling that resonates with you. That is one of the ways I find that it really helps to cultivate a meaningful life. And I've been really, really enjoying it. I've been really getting a lot out of it. It's funny. I have to say, I've been feeling really good the very beginning of the new year. I mean, I always feel pretty good, but like I've been feeling really good. And I think it's just all these things I'm doing. Like I'm doing all of these things and it really helps. Something I've been doing for a long time, and I probably shared it with you in the 50 ways to live a meaningful life, but it is something I do and I just want to share it with you again, is what I call waking in wakefulness. So this is number 7. The first thing I do upon waking is smile. I really do. I am awake. Like, that's awesome. That is reason to celebrate. So I wake up and I go, all right, that's pretty awesome. And the second thing I do is, in my head, I write a gratitude list. So I don't tend to write a gratitude list every day. It's like in my head all the time. And so I just start there. And usually I really feel like it's like the goodnight moon. I feel like goodnight moon. You know how in goodnight moon, it's like goodnight, what is it? I don't know. Goodnight table, goodnight moon. Well, that's the point. All right. So right? And so I feel like it's kind of like that when I start, because it's usually things that I can see. It's things that are right in front of me. Like, I'm really grateful for waking up. I'm grateful for this bed. I'm grateful for this amazing man I get to live my life with. I'm grateful for being warm and safe. I'm grateful for being in my home. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for Michiko. I'm grateful for being able to get out of my bed. Like, when I broke my ankle, I couldn't get out of my bed by myself. It was pretty painful and awful. So all of those things are things I start the day with. And so I do that gratitude list in my head. And actually, speaking of that, as I was writing this and kind of drafting this episode, it reminded me of a book that I heard about recently called "Thank You Everything: An Illustrated Love Letter to the World," and I highly recommend it. It is so beautiful. It's simple. It's under like children's art in at Amazon or whoever, I don't know what other bookstores are doing, but it's called Thank You Everything. Like, the artwork is so beautiful. It's like, thank you sink. It's just a sink. Thank you glass. Thank you bed. So again, it's kind of like this goodnight moon, but it's thank you everything. So if you struggle with gratitude lists, get this book. Even if you don't struggle, get this book. It is so beautiful. The next thing I do in my head, this is all before I even get out of bed, I ask myself, what good will I do today? And it's kind of fun. Like, I really love it. It's like a wonderful way to start the day, because I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. I could send a birthday card. I think it's so-and-so's birthday in a few days. And that's another thing, by the way. I have everybody's birthday who's in my life, who I love and want to remember, whose birthday I want to remember. I have their birthday in my calendar. But one of the things I did last year was I went through everyone's birthday in my calendar and I changed the notifications to 5 days before, and then 3 days before, and then 1 day before. Because I would get notifications like 1 day before, and I'm like, well, it's too late to send a card now. And I know not everybody sends cards, and you might not think it's a zero waste thing to do. I have no problem with it, because I think it's really special to receive a card in the mail. Get a compostable card, you can get a plantable card, whatever, right? A seeded card. But I find it really special. But getting those birth dates, so in the calendar, in my, like, I use Google Calendar, and then changing the notification so you're getting the notification 5 days beforehand, really helpful. So I'll be like, I don't know, I could send a birthday card to so-and-so, I could send a thank you card, I could just send a card, I could go help my neighbor, I can make a donate. Like, it is so much fun to just be like, what good will I do today? It could also be something simple like, I'm going to, I don't know, do some extra special thing for David today, or a friend, or whatever. What good will I do today is what I ask myself upon waking. And then I set my intention for the day. It could be anything. For you, it might be a prayer. I mean, I kind of think this is a prayer. It's kind of my put the words in my mouth, the love in my heart, and help me speak and live and act with grace and generosity and integrity and magnanimity and compassion, right? Like, I have my prayer of like, orient me to these things today. And that's how I start my day. It is just literally waking in wakefulness. So that is number 7. Number 8, I've talked about it before. I'm sorry I keep saying that, but I just want you to know that I'm aware. It's choosing right speech. And for me, what I'm focused on this year, that is not that different from other years, but it's having silent days and curtailing complaining. So I've talked about right speech before. It comes directly out of Buddhism. It is one of the 5 precepts for the ethical conduct in Buddhism. It's part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And right speech, the whole idea is to practice abstaining from harmful speech and cultivating wise speech. And so it's like, right speech means like avoiding false speech, so not lying, avoiding slanderous speech, so that could be gossiping, avoiding harsh speech, so that could be like yelling, swearing, just outbursts, and avoiding idle chatter. And so I think you'll agree, words can have consequences, both positive and negative. And so I like to be mindful of my words. And so in the practical sense, for me, the 2 ways that are significant to practice right speech are silent days and being mindful of not complaining and gossiping. And it kind of goes hand in hand. Kind of not negative speech, right? Negative speech. And so I do live a quiet life, but living a quiet life is not the same thing as being silent. And despite all the time I spend alone, I live in a continual cycle of speech. Just talking can be exhausting, not only for the person talking, but for the person listening. And so consciously choosing to be silent is at once powerful and calming. And I can tell you that I think David's always really happy when I have silent days. Because I'm always talking at him. I just am. I always have ideas. I always have thoughts. I always have suggestions. I always have things to do. And so, yeah. So I think he's always happy. And actually, David will have more silent days when I do more silent days. So we do inspire each other in that. We used to do them together. And I would think that he would be interested in doing them again with me this year. I haven't asked him, even though David could easily have a silent day without even intending to. So silent days been part of my practice for years, but I haven't been consistent. So at this moment in time, I'm committed to being more consistent, which means having a silent day once a week. So much so that I have already said no to meetings or one-on-ones or dates with friends or whatever. I mean, I don't record podcasts or have social media on my silent days. And I have chosen Mondays for that. Now, obviously I don't choose weekends because I want to be with my friends or with David. I will give David a warning the day before, the day before, so that he knows not to expect me to talk the next day. Although it's pretty clear when I start a day with a silent day, because yeah, I start talking pretty quickly after waking. So, but I do tell him the day before, it's just so he has that expectation, and I find them really powerful. It's kind of like what I was saying about this forced habit of like when my phone is off and I realize I go to reach for it and then I go, no, it's off. And so having silent days, they're also really powerful because I go to like, I realize when I would speak when I don't have anything to say, when I'm just talking to talk. And even though I'm sure you would agree that everything that comes out of my mouth is profound and meaningful, not. Yeah, there's a lot that I'll speak for myself that comes out of my mouth that's like, why did you say that? Like that didn't make sense. You're just babbling or you're just talking to talk. And so stepping away from constant speaking is how I become more aware of what I say that's unnecessary or reactive or sometimes unkind. And so silence forces me to focus on the intention behind my words, to practice right speech for when I start speaking again. And so it's only 24 hours, but when I return to speaking, I find that even not having spoken for only 24 hours, I find I'm more mindful of the words I choose. I'm more aware of how much energy it takes to talk, especially if I'm not really saying anything at all. How much I say just to fill up quiet space. How much I, just like I said, talk about nonsense, and how much I realize I talk about, I'm human. I realize I talk about someone else, right? And in those ways, that can also mean, kind of character assassinating. Not in any kind of obvious way, but in a way that like kind of makes me look a little better, someone else not so good. Even being like, God, I would never do what they're doing, right? It's like, why are you saying that? Like, just these subtle ways that I think we could talk about people in unkind ways, and I don't want to do that. And complaining is kind of related to that as well. And so again, it's kind of like, there is something from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. What does he say? He says something like, yeah, why even talk about this? Like if it's gonna kill you, then you're gonna die. So okay, what's the point? And if it's not gonna kill you, then like shut up and just go handle it. Like something like that. And I'm like, oh, I love that. So just like it's just, and I don't have to complain. And I realize sometimes I do. And I think that's also part of kind of filling in empty space. So that is another one of my intentions for this year. And I think, again, even if you're not doing all of these things, just another tool in the tool belt for what I have found to be very meaningful. Number 9, we're getting there, folks, almost done. Number 9 is go on a news diet. And I've talked about this recently on social media. I think I even have a podcast episode on it. And I will say again that I think that, I talked about this in the Joyful Vegan, that we think that, we think that we have to like stare in order to be engaged. And that I think we have to be really discerning about how much suffering we're able to endure when it comes to animal advocacy or anything we care about. Like we need to bear witness, but we don't have to do it all the time, and we don't have to stare. And it's the same thing with the news. Like the feeling we get when we watch or read or listen to the incessant, never-ending cycle of bad news in the media, we think we're engaged All that is doing is giving us a sense of dread and fear and anxiety and stress. And if you think that you not knowing what's going on every second in the world is irresponsible, that you're not being engaged, then I would say that you're not engaging in the right way, because reading the news headlines and reading news is not necessarily being engaged. The problem is, and I may have said this in that podcast episode, that we equate being enraged with being engaged. We equate being reactive with being active. We equate consuming information with being informed. So there's a line between the two of those. It's distorted if we think that when we're reactive to something that we read in the news is being active. When we think we're being enraged about something is being engaged, that's distorted. That's a distorted understanding of engagement. Being engaged is not about reacting to what someone else decides is the most important thing to freak out about at that moment. Being engaged is about being discerning, being thoughtful, being judicious, deciding for ourselves what we want our days and our minds to be filled with. And so I am in the middle of a news diet that I don't know how long it's going to last. I'll be really honest with you. But when I said that I've been feeling really good so for a while, like really good, I think a huge part of it, I know it has to be the fact that I have not been engaged with the news since November at all. And by the way, I'm on social media, and I can tell you that you can have a life on social media. I mean, I'm just doing my thing on social media. I'm not like there every second without actually seeing the news. I haven't mistakenly seen the news at all. Nothing. No headline. David told me about a news story, and I was like, no, stop. I don't want to know. Like, me hearing about this tragedy that just happened, that's not going to help me. What I'm already doing in my life is to just be thoughtful, mindful. Hi, this podcast episode is about how to live a meaningful life. You think that is less important than like reading a headline? And then if you do this, notice how it feels. Notice what you do instead. So again, what do you normally do? Like, I used to go to the New York Times like immediately, every day. And I did like it, but there was probably also some adrenaline I was getting out of it. So I'm not doing that anymore. So what am I doing instead? Yeah, I'm like journaling every day. I'm reading, literature, long form, essays, listening to podcasts, exercising, but doing things that I do already and love, but like really doing them and not getting distracted by constantly going over to read the news. And that goes for social media as well, folks. I'm not someone who gets my news from social media, but I know that we can all go through social media and scroll and just start. That is so toxic to our brains. And it just produces anxiety, and it just produces stress. That's not engagement. So you can go listen to the episode called Stop Reading the News, Take a 30-Day Media Diet. You can join me. It's been months, and might keep going on. And by the way, David and I play New York Times games every day. I don't go to the New York Times. I go to the app. And I go to NewYorkTimes.com/games that just automatically shows up in my address bar. So I don't even have to go to the headline. And I don't sneak over either. I don't want to. It feels so good to be away from it. But I'm still doing the things that I really like, over at the New York Times, specifically the games, because we play Connections, then we play the mini crossword, and then we play Wordle, and then we time box Spelling Bee, because Spelling Bee is my favorite. But we have to time box it because it takes forever. So that is number 9. And number 10 is just keep learning something new. Just keep doing something new. And I guess even more than just saying that, because it's not just about learning intellectually, it's about playing and about doing something fun, different, taking a new class. So that's another thing that I'm doing this year is kind of focusing more on creativity. And that means in my work, and I think that's why I'm also feeling a lot more engaged and excited about my work, just focusing more on the creativity and not the outcome. And I'll tell you a secret, because I've been talking to a very good friend of mine, and we've been talking a lot about this idea. And it's related to stretching in my comfort zones as well. And the thing that I wouldn't tell you about earlier is the thing that is something I'm going to do that's kind of related to this play and taking a class. And I still don't feel like I want to say it out loud. I don't know why. But we've been talking about this a lot. And one of the things that came out of the book, The Artist's Way, and you can even just get the Artist's Way workbook, is After morning pages, the other suggestion is to do an artist date. And when I say artist, if you don't think yourself as an artist, just think of yourself as a creative human being who has like things to experience in the world. Like, so don't think so rigidly in terms of artistry as being like a painter or a writer. Think more broadly. And I highly recommend the Artist Way. And the Artist Way workbook is wonderful. So one of the her suggestions, Julia Cameron's suggestions, is to have an artist date, and it's having it by yourself and choosing something that's just going to go inspire creativity or excitement or awe or wonder. Could be going to a museum, could be going to a movie theater, could be taking a walk, could be doing a hike. Something different though, taking a class. And so I've already had on my list for this year to take a class. I'm really interested in, I've been talking for years about doing the course in nonviolent communication and doing some certification around that. I've also been talking about doing and looking into doing courses in horticulture and doing more because I love gardening and I'm just in our garden more and more and more and I want to learn more and I have things to learn, a lot to learn. So that's another thing. And this other class that I'm not going to mention that I'll mention another time. But so I was like, okay, well, what's my artist date going to be? You know, what's different than what I already do and love? Well, one of the things that's different is that David and I do a lot of things, but we do a lot of things together. And that's wonderful. But like thinking of going to a museum by myself, like we go everywhere together. So it's a really great idea to do it by myself because you engage differently with the thing you're going to see and you engage differently with the world around you than when you're with a partner or a friend, whoever, right? But just doing it alone. So that's one of the main criteria of the artist date is doing it alone. And so in doing something creative, like whatever, something that sparks creativity. I shouldn't say it has to be creative, it sparks creativity. So here's the secret. It's not even a secret. So one of the things I did this year for my friends as a Christmas gift, I gave everybody a puzzle, a small puzzle. And they were beautiful wood puzzles, wooden pieces. And I gave each person I gave a puzzle to. The puzzle was related to their personality or a hobby of theirs or a passion of theirs or a love of theirs. So I have a very good friend who has a rescue parrot. So the puzzle I gave her was a parrot. I have a good friend who loves to just walk around and see like houses in the neighborhood. So I gave her, it's like a cute little cottage. Someone else I gave a hummingbird to. Someone else I gave, just like different things. And I got myself a puzzle of a deer, beautiful like stag with antlers. Now, these are small puzzles. But I gave everybody this puzzle or a puzzle with the intention of saying just being still and being creative and doing something playful and not doing something that has a purpose. Well, guess what? Everyone did their puzzle. Almost everyone. They would send me. We have a text chat, and everyone sent the picture of their puzzle. And I was like, I'm really proud of you guys. And I had no idea when I was going to do my puzzle. I hadn't thought about it. And when I thought about what my artist date was last night, David had a date already with some old coworkers, and I said, I know my artist date. My artist date is to do this puzzle by myself, because I think when I was thinking of the puzzles too, I got one for David as well. I was like, oh, we'll do them together. No. After having done this puzzle last night, I don't want to ever do a puzzle with anybody else. It was so enjoyable to do it by myself. And oh my God, and it was the most ridiculous thing. I had the most wonderful time. I made a Shirley Temple. I made a double Shirley Temple. And I did this puzzle, I put music on. It was so powerful. And for me, it was powerful. Why? Because I did something creative that didn't have a purpose. Because a lot of my creativity, including writing, including doing this podcast, it has a purpose. To do something that has no purpose other than for the point of doing it, for the creative point, for the creative interest, for the creative excitement, for the creativity, is very new for me. It's very different for me. And I enjoyed the bejesus out of it. I loved it. Yeah. So it's all done. It's pretty. If you want to see a picture, let me know. I'll share these pictures. I'll share the picture. I'll share the resources with all the like links to all the resources over on Patreon. So that's all the stuff that you guys get as Patreon supporters. So go over to Patreon, get part of this community. I'm going to send links to all of the books I talked about, some of the quotes, the resources, the puzzles even. I'll send everything over there, and I'll send a picture of my puzzle because I'm very proud of my puzzle. It's a beautiful puzzle. And what was really cool was that some of the pieces were actually deer. Like they were little pieces, little pieces. They were little deer. There was a head of a deer, another head of a stag, a little body, a little jumping deer. They were some of the pieces of the puzzle of the deer. It's really, really cool. I sent a picture to my sister because I got her a puzzle. I don't know if she's gotten it yet. She hasn't told me. But because it was one of the late Christmas presents. We did a Zoom Christmas present opening again this year. And that particular puzzle, that present for her, which was a puzzle, was late. So I just sent it. I know it arrived yesterday, but she hasn't opened it yet, I don't think. But I got her a puzzle. So I sent her my picture of my puzzle. And I haven't done puzzles since I was like 10. I don't even know. I think my sister does puzzles. Like, that's why I got her a puzzle. And she was one of the recipients of my whole reason for getting everybody puzzles. I think puzzle might be one of my favorite words. I love the word puzzle. Okay, so I sent her a picture of my puzzle, and her first question was how many pieces, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's like what you ask when you do puzzles, or that's what you look for when you're buying puzzles, right? 10,000 pieces. I don't even know. Is that a lot? 1,000 pieces. So she came back later as we were chatting about something else, and she goes, oh, 65. And I go, 65 what? Pieces? Because I said it's a little baby puzzle. And she goes, yeah. I go, how did you know? Do you just like know that intuitively? She said, I counted. I said, you counted? Like, why would you count? Anyway, creativity with no purpose. It was a blast. And I have nothing more to say because I have been saying so much for almost 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up, and I hope it has been helpful for you. I will send a recap. I will send kind of a summary and resources and links, like I said. Last thing, last announcement. For those of you who know, I really love Complement, their supplements. They are having a massive sale, 30% off of bundles that you can pick yourself. So if you are interested, you need to use my link. Go over to joyfulvegan.com. On the homepage, you will see the link for the Complement supplements. Anything I've talked about in this podcast, the omega 3 complex, the omega complex, the essentials, anything and everything they have over there. You create your own little bundle and you get 30% off. Use my link and enjoy it. That is all I have to say. Keep me posted on how your year is going. We'll have more conversations over at Patreon. I hope you can join me over there. For the animals, this is Colleen, Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening and Happy New Year.